Hello, everyone. We are starting our ninth QA Hub Tech Talk. Today, our topic is one-man team, test monitoring and quality control. And our speaker is Tatiana Yugai. Tatiana, thank you that you again, like a speaker, participating to our Tech Talk. We are great to see you again. Thank you. And what are you?
Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me, you can see me. Thank you for having me today. As Arina told, my name is Tatiana Yugai. I'm software testing team lead and 14 years in quality assurance for so far. As you can see on this slide, I've been a quality engineering mentor, quality management system auditor, system software testing engineer, and participate in 20 plus projects so far. And today I want to talk to you about a very popular topic about one-man team. When you have only one tester on a delivery team full of developers, system analytics, and many other specialists, but the tester is the only one. And can one person on a battlefield be considered a warrior? How do you think? Maybe it can occur to a tester too. And what this specialist then, a test manager or a software testing engineer, or maybe just a tester or a developer who can contribute into testing? That's the questions we are going to talk about today. We'll talk about Quality Dream Team, its responsibilities, how test monitoring and control can help when you're alone on your team as a tester, and how can we estimate testing efforts using some very simple tools. And of course, we'll have questions and answer sessions afterwards. So you're very welcome asking your questions, maybe in advance now in the chat, so we can discuss them afterwards. First of all, to start with, I want you to check in our talk, answering this very simple question. What do you think is expected from testing on a project? You can write it on the chat or maybe unmute yourself quickly and tell us your opinion, because I guess there are a lot of things that are expected from testing. When I enter a company or enter a project, there are always a lot of things they want me to do or they wish me to do or whatever. So I'm giving you quite 30 seconds for this, just for your check-in, so you can be on the same page with me.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't mute, but can write in the chat. And we are waiting for your answers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I see information about product quality. New features work as expected, and its addition didn't break anything built previously. Improve the quality of the product, quality and results. Monitoring and verifying product quality, quality documentation feedback. Your battle has to match your capacity. Information to make go, no-go decision for new release. Provide transparent information regarding product quality testing process, not allowing critical and blocker bugs to make the production.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone is here who answered is right, because there are a lot of things, as I have already told us, about verification, some requirements, validation, some assessment criteria, using best practices, using test monitoring, using quality assurance, and providing user-friendly software and engineering excellence. All of the things you've listed and I've listed myself are expected from testing team usually. So when you are alone on this mm, specialty, let me say, you are expected to do this alone. But when we are talking about this huge bunch of responsibilities, in the perfect world, we'll expect it to be a dream team of quality assurance engineers, different roles, different specialists who can divide the responsibilities between themselves. And let me share you with my opinion how this dream team can look like. Like we are talking about a real dream team of a perfect world where we have a quality assurance manager, quality architect, some testing and operation engineer, quality assurance team leads for each directions and streams we're having on the project, the quality engineering tech leads who can be experts and mentor somebody else. We'll have some quality officers who gonna do the quality control checkouts. Uh, and of course, automation quality engineers, non-functional testers, SDET, and senior, middle, and junior testers, of course. This is how a really dream team looks like. So this 12 roles can divide all the responsibilities you mentioned before and perform them as a perfect team. But in our world, we don't usually have this dream team and even don't have any possibility to have such a big team because it depends on really many situations and features and money and so on. That's why in our world, we hope it to be at least like this. Like we have 5 roles only: a manual quality assurance engineer, somebody from test automation, some technical lead who can do some expertise, and some team lead who can do managerial stuff, and somebody else from non-functional testing. It can be a performance quality engineer or maybe security quality engineer or whatever, maybe for instance, maybe UI UX tester, because it depends on the project. And when we have at least these 5 roles, it's also possible to divide all the responsibilities quite well and not be very challenging for us. But the reality is, when we do have we don't have even this kind of teams nowadays. Usually we do have one-man team. When we have a project with one or maybe 1.5 tester in it, when we have one experienced tester and maybe some staging specialist or a junior who is just helping, or maybe one specialist who is a real tester and somebody else from the team, maybe a junior developer or a product owner himself who can help in some testing activities. This all kind of teams I call one-man team because the only one person on this team, a quality assurance engineer usually, who can be responsible for all the things we usually expect from a whole quality team. But when people say about one-man team, they usually treat it like it's something negative. But I assure you, it depends on many things. Like on the team, for example, if the team itself is very small, like consisting of 3 people only, one developer, one analytic, and one tester, so then one tester on a team is not so challenging, and it's okay. And it can depend on the project or the product you are implementing, because sometimes it uses some methodology when a tester is needed only in the end of the process. So you don't need a lot of testers here, because everything will be done on its way in the line, and you'll just need to check the requirements being validated and so on. Sometimes it depends on the person, because there are a lot of people who like multitasking and who are really fond of being everywhere and doing everything, like be participating in test requirement analysis and being doing some test reviews with some coworkers, doing the test cases himself or themselves, or even helping some DevOps engineers with CI/CD processes and so on. That's why I think that one-man team is not usually a bad thing, but it can be really challenging. Why it can be challenging and why it happens that we have one-man team nowadays in our projects. First reason is immaturity, because some managers just don't understand the benefits of a full QA team has. They just don't know how to manage a team of testers, and it's not easy because it will need us some time to build a team, some time to find the necessary specialists to build the processes, to define some strategy, approach, and so on and so forth. And it can just challenge a manager to do this, and they prefer to have one person who is already in the project, who is already aware of the processes inside the company. So why not? Why challenge yourself with this whole team problem? A second reason is money saving, and it's really helps because, as we say, for small companies or small teams or small projects, and for experiments and some kinds of when we want to check MVP's project, it's not really worth it to spend a lot of money to hire a full quality assurance team just to check some ideas or do some project in maybe 1 month long. And sometimes these so-called greedy managers are right by doing by doing choice in towards one person on the uh, project. And the third reason is lack of specialists. And it's totally true, because when you try to find somebody on the market, a good quality assurance manager or an architect or testing and operation engineer or even leads or seniors are really extremely hard to find and adapt, because they have their own mindset and they need to be um, adapting, and maybe even sometimes it cannot be adapted because they just don't want to work the way this company wants to work, and don't want to value the values they need to do. And this lack of specialists that necessary for a full QA team to be on a project can lead us that we'll have one person on the team. And the evident drawbacks of this one-man team is, as I already told, it's very challenging because it's hard to cope with time. We have no work-life balance at all. We need to study permanently every day, every night, and we need to know all of the things by ourselves, because management things and CI/CD things and release management and some risks analysis, estimation, everything about testing, and not only test execution and not only test reporting, is included in this life. And also it can be skills narrowing, because we don't have any time to diversify our experience. We're stuck on the project and we see the project features only, and we can succeed within the project but not outside of it. And maybe sometimes later we won't be very good specialists, but we are very good at this project. And lack of teamwork work experience, when you don't have other quality engineers to collaborate and learn new ideas from them, and you lack the discussion and soft skill practice between your colleagues with the same mindsets and same thoughts as you are, and you just don't have anybody to take advice or whatever. This is a very evident drawbacks, but let us look at this situation from the other point of view and see that one-man team can have advantages too, because it has the opportunities to grow and study instead of being challenging, because we have all QA directions from test execution to managerial estimations and risk analysis, all done by ourselves. And it's a really good chance to try and to develop yourself and improve your skills in this direction if you really want to proceed in the future to be a quality assurance manager or maybe a team lead or whoever you want to be. And from this point, it grows that we can hope about the career growth because you become a very important person who knows and can a lot on the project. And sometimes you even become a bottleneck or a buzz factor because you are inside of every process of this project because you are alone. You can be exchanged by somebody else because every other member of the team is responsible for something else, not the testing or quality. And the third advantages here is smooth in-team processes. Also, we don't have any another quality assurance engineers here. We still have our team members, the developers, analytics, UI, UX designers, product owners, some business representatives, other stakeholders, all the people around you are yours to collaborate and communicate. And it's even better for you because when you talk to your tester colleagues only, you can see the problem or the situation only from one point of view with your testing mindset. But when you talk and collaborate with really many different roles, you can see this situation from many other points of view. You can understand it from the point of view of developer or the point of view of DevOps engineer, or maybe system engineer can ask you some questions or add some ideas to your testing. And this can help you improve your quality assurance processes and understanding of the project itself. That's why we turn to the responsibilities of this kind of universal tester when we see that we have some drawbacks and we have some advantages that can conquer themselves. So what are the responsibilities of this tester? Usually we do have three kinds of responsibilities of universal tester who is alone on the project. First of all is of course the engineering one when we do the test implementation and execution itself. So it's validation and verification that is clearest. And we do have analytical part. It's very well known for everyone too. It's test documentation, requirement analysis, and so on. And the most unknown or maybe challenging for a lot of testers is the managerial part, because here you need to define some test approach, uh, employ some monitoring, quality control, and do a lot of communication, giving a lot of feedbacks, collaborating with different people, and understanding how the stakeholders expect something to happen and how you can provide this expectation to them. So um, let us study this managerial part of our responsibilities more detailed. What is about the managerial part? Defining your test approach for yourself is quite easy when you don't have a whole team with you, because you're alone. You don't have to confirm your ideas, and you don't have to argue or maybe to discuss it or provide some maybe facts and so on. You need just to agree with yourself. When you understand about this approach, it's okay for you. You just say to the team that you're a testing manager, you're a quality gate here, and you decided that the testing approach for your team is going to be like this. Then you'll need to understand who can help you with that. Actually, when you don't have any helpers or a tester helpers, I mean, you don't have anyone else on the team, you still can use your team members to help you, like it happens in agile teams. Then you can ask your developers who is free at the moment to help you with test review, so it's understandable for everyone. You can ask or collaborate with product owners, so you can review the requirements, and so on. So the second step of your managerial piece of responsibilities is going to be understanding who can help you and with what they can help you and when. Then you can choose the tools and understand your risk and measurements analysis, so you can put some control checks on this, because when you decide on the metrics and you decide on the measurements you will use in the project, it means that you will check them, because the metrics without checking is useless. Then you'll define the adopted quality assurance standards and rules, because without rules, you'll just lose the discipline. And when you're alone, it's really easy to lose a discipline. And very important to remember that when you lose your discipline, there is nobody else, maybe from above, or maybe testing engineer with managerial staff and so on, is yourself. And there is no other manager who can just remind you about something or turn you back to the right path or whatever. So it's only your responsibility to keep the discipline yourself and keep on the track. And of course, we're talking about making the plans for testing and making the plans for monitoring. We'll talk about this a little bit later on. So, and talking about managerial stuff, we've mentioned the test monitoring and quality control. And how can it help when you're alone as a tester on the project? Firstly, let's see what test monitoring is. Test monitoring is a process when we evaluate and provide feedback on the test activities in progress. So we can see that specific targets are met or not met at every stage of our testing, so they can meet predetermined objectives in the end of our sprint or maybe other reported period of time. Why do we need it? When we can just evaluate some test activities in progress and not only when it's finished, we can find some errors or misbehaviors earlier. So how we use this test monitoring? We divide it into two steps. First one is in the planning phase, when we define the risk analysis and test estimation and include them into our test monitoring and control future checks. And then we use the test monitoring in execution phase, when we do the evaluating and feedbacking processes inside the process. So, and the second part of this system is quality control. So only when we evaluate some processes or just see some misbehaviors or errors is not enough, because we need to address these misbehaviors and errors to the stakeholders. We need to, so everybody can be aware of them and keep on the same page with the whole team. We can modify the testing process so that it becomes better suited for meeting the objectives when we know now the new data we face. So it can really be different from the one we had in the planning. That's why we have this two parts system with test monitoring from other side and quality control from another side. How it works? When we use test monitoring, we evaluate, check, and count something. For example, some metrics we predefined before, and then turning to quality control, we can check this evaluation and correct some processes or add some doings or maybe improvements in the work of every team member, including addressing the errors and suggesting some improvements so we can really reach the goal we planned before. Talking about control and monitoring, it's usually connected with software testing metrics. Here I listed some of the metrics, most popular metrics, which use maybe mostly in my projects before, because they really, sometimes we use some really specific metrics on our projects, which are not used anywhere else. And these are very common ones. Like we can consider the number of test cases, and when we plan that we'll have maybe 10 test cases for this specific user story because it has 10 acceptance criteria. And when we control this after some time and see that we don't have 10, we'll have maybe 5, and we see that it's quite enough. So we can just correct this situation from the planning ourselves, and so on. I'll share you an example of my testing schedule of one sprint I did. I did change some numbers here, so you don't know the user stories real numbers and names, and so you can understand how it happens. So I do the sprint schedule for every iteration, like for every day one, what I do on day one with the statuses and the testing activities I plan for each work item and the backlog, and then the test monitoring statuses. Like if I check the user story number 1, it should be in development, and my part here is doing the test cases. And if it's okay and it complies with planned situation, I just put the check mark. And no quality control actions needed. When we turn to the user story number 2, we see that it should be in development and I should be doing test cases for it. But then we see that it's not in development, or the developer has some blockers, or it's not developed because we don't have some capacity, or maybe some developer doesn't know how to do it, and then we'll need some help of another developer and so on. And that's why we put the test monitoring, that we need some quality control actions to improve the situation, because otherwise we'll won't meet the expectations and we won't reach the goal of the sprint in the end. So the earlier we find this situation, the earlier we monitor this and can address it, the better for us. How it happens in the scope of software testing lifecycle, we see that we have a common lifecycle of testing here. The first one is requirement analysis, where we just need to get the big picture of our monitoring and control plan. When we do the test planning, we just list the control points when we need to do the monitoring, and provide some pieces of time. So after we check and evaluate something, we'll have some pieces of time to make action items, or to provide the feedback, or discuss the situation with your team, and so on. And every other stage, we have the evaluation of test monitoring and providing the feedback. Again, evaluation, doing the feedback and making some improvements and so on until the very end. And even afterwards, when we finish everything, we need to evaluate the expected results with what we have, with the actual ones, and again, give the feedback and provide some suggestions how to improve it. This is the way how we can improve your testing processes from one sprint to another. So even being alone on the project, you can do it more smoothly again and again. And even after maybe a couple of months, I hope, or maybe for me, last time it was certain sprints we needed to spend certain sprints before we reach kind of perfect process when everybody on the team understood how it works and why I do these questions every time. Why do I evaluate and estimate everything, and why I talk about this seemingly little problems in the very beginning of sprint. They were like, "Oh my God, we have 10 days ahead. What are you talking about? We'll manage to do it. Why are you talking about this now? Let's talk about it in a week or so." And then after time spent, they understood that this was really helpful, because when we changed these things, little things in the beginning, they didn't grow into bigger things in the end. How does monitoring and control looks like in steps? So we collect and record some information, we define the project goal and see if it complies with it. We observe the performance, how it happens. Then we monitor the related issues, plan our improvements, bring them to life, and remove all the difference. Easy enough to understand and implement for everyone. It's not necessary to be a senior testing engineer or maybe a team lead or whatever. It can be done by a junior testing engineer as well. And to add up, I'll give you some test monitoring and quality control tools and methods that are easy to implement too. First of all, it's self-review. When we manually check up the work items in progress. So we just check the statuses, see if everything complies with plans we do, and everybody is okay, and nobody is worried about some maybe user stories or bugs or the situation on the team. Then you use the questioning, so your team members are all available for you to question them. You can just write down some questions. You can ask them every day, like, is everything okay? Are you doing the things right? Don't you need some more time? And so on. And maybe you have some troubles, and maybe I can help you. Maybe somebody else can help you. This is the questioning is just possible for everyone. You don't need some special knowledge or skills to do it. Then it's checklist with metrics. When you define your metrics and decide on which one you will use to evaluate your efforts, you just do the checklist with it, maybe a table even, in Confluence or in maybe some Excel or whatever you need, maybe in Notepad. And you just check the previously planned results at each stage with the actual results, and that's all. Of course, we'll have some visualization when you can draw roadmaps, traceability metrics, so you can better understand it. But it's better be used for talking to stakeholders or business representatives when you just explain them the way you work. You can use a notepad and a pen just to write down manually and draw some measurements, how it works, and maybe some graphics and so on. And of course, there are automated tools, and you can just analyze them and choose the one you need, but they usually cost some money, or they need some implementation or special skills. That's why I don't advise them. But if you are going to have a really huge project, you'd better have something like that. But when you're talking about automated tools, it's not usually common for a team to have only one tester, because it's about something really big. So to sum up, let's move to the test monitoring and quality control best practices, just to confirm our thoughts on it. Firstly, it's about establishing standards. When we set a benchmark and objectives and use guidelines for unified structure and rules to execute tasks, we can make analysis easier, facilitate better communication, and help navigate the project even more efficiently than now. Secondly, when we prioritize documentation. We document everything: incidents, test result, measurement. We can just minutes of our stakeholders meetings and so on. When we document everything, we can address every other situation that happened and improve every other situation. And this documentation can be used for the stakeholders to be absolutely aware of everything. So we'll avoid miscommunication and keep all the stakeholders on the same page. And the last but not least is being proactive and prepare for change. I think this can be a motto for every tester, especially the ones who work on Agile, because we'll being proactive and always be prepared for change costs you a lot of maybe psychological health, because we'll have some high possibility of disruptions, and the issues can vary from really small one to very huge one. It can consume our time. It can break some infrastructure. It can be very expensive or so on. And you should be ready for everything, because you're not the one who will fix it. You are the one who can tell about it, who can provide some information, and who can offer some decisions that can be really good for the situation, but not the one who is fixing it. The one who is fixing it as a team, the whole team itself, not only the tester. So this is almost the very end of my report. So let me highlight some benefits for test monitoring and quality control when you use it being alone on the testing scope in a project. We'll have some cheap mistakes because they early found and fixed it at the very beginning of our every iteration. We'll have some clear processes, more understandable for everyone, because we'll keep on asking questions and keep on giving feedbacks every now and then. So every stakeholder, every team member, everybody else on the project and the company are aware of everything you're doing here to provide the quality. Of course, it will be the test efficiency rise because you have the metrics. And when you use the metrics, you can improve the numbers from one iteration to another, and maybe in a year or in half a year, you can see that they can grow, and showing that your test efficiency grows too. And it's easier life for everyone on the team. Why it's easier? Because everything is clear. When everything is clear and we have cheap mistakes and we communicate easily with each other, it's easier to live, easier to work. With all these benefits, it gives us better for the role of testing, and quality advocacy increases, so we can really impact on the quality of the things we're doing. And that's what our purpose is, isn't it? So here I'm finishing my report and opening the questions and answers session for all of you. Thank you again for your attention. Thank you for having me today. And please welcome to the questions.
Thank you, Tatiana, for great talk. It was very interesting, and we are waiting for your questions. And please send badges to Tatiana. You have this opportunity. It was really great talk. You can write thank you words in the chat and send badges. We also had great discussions in the chat for all time and have some questions already in the chat. Do you have any advices for, let's say, a single QA in a team with 5 developers? How would you manage the entire STLC?
Oh, that's a very good question, because I have experienced this situation maybe 5 or 6 years ago. There were really 2 front-end developers, 2 back-end developers, and one some kind of develop developer who was responsible for databases, and I was the only one tester here. The thing is that when you have a lot of developers, it's the most difficult thing is here is communication with them, because developers, they have the different mindset, and they understand the things like maybe I don't want to hurt developers if you are here. I mean that developers think like more like machines. I mean, sometimes I even call my little brother, who is a developer, uh, an android, because when we talk about business values, some developers just don't understand it. And the first thing I did when I worked on this project with 5 developers, I just translated every our requirement given from business representatives to these developers on their language. So this made my life better, because I could just translate them and they would understand it. Because when we started, there was user stories in our backtracker systems, and they just said, "Oh yeah, I'll do it." Then I did it, and we come across that they did it just different way, because they did understand it a different way. So my first step was just translating all the tasks before giving them to developers into their language. The second part of my communication was I started testing with developers, because sometimes it's really hard for yourself to do all the stuff. And so I asked some developers who is maybe some junior developers, that let's test this together so we can assure that everyone on the same page and you understand this problem the same way as I do. And we did it. As the time passes, so the developers themselves told me, "Oh, that's easy. I'll test it myself, and if everything okay, I'll put it into RFT, and you'll test it yourself." So it helped me with my other problem, because I didn't need to test the whole scope by myself. They tested themselves, and only when everything was okay from their side, they gave it to me. So it's just reduced my scope of testing maybe a lot. What else? I don't remember what else I used, because maybe it was something like of the team building and some specific, but let me stop on this too. Let me see.
Thank you, Tatiana, for detailed answer with your experience. And we have another questions. What about risks about being a single key? How to mitigate them?
The risk, the maybe most dangerous risk, as I guess, is when you're alone. I mean, is when you need to leave the team for some reason, maybe for vacation or maybe sick leave or whatever. You have some reasons to leave, and it's a risk for the teams that they don't have anyone to replace you, and it can be challenging for them, because they need to test it, they need to ask some questions and so on. And this risk can be mitigated by a very good planning, and the maybe beginning of every quarter or every month or so, now and then when you have some time for it. So you can just plan your kind of backlog and see that sometimes you really have some user stories or tasks that needs no testing, but mostly doing some enablers for future tasks, and maybe doing some um, investigation about future tasks and so on. So you can just communicate to your teams that for the periods of time when you're off for your vacation on or whatever you want to plan, let us plan that these pieces of time would be full of such kind of tasks and user stories that you won't be needed for maybe a couple of weeks or so. And for the cases when you unexpectedly can leave the team, you'll need to have somebody else from the team, like maybe whoever who is mostly uh, alike your mindset or something like that, who can replace you a very little bit, like who can understand, who is mostly or more frequently sees your test cases, or who can understand the way you work. They might not be testing, but they can just check some maybe end-to-end validation and so on. It's the most risky, I think. What else is risky when you are alone? Well, maybe the second dangerous thing here is when you have a huge scope and you're alone. Like many teams, they suggest on the planning when they have, for example, 5 developers and 1 tester, they don't suggest about the testing. They think that we have 5 developers. Let's take 10 user stories in this sprint, 2 for each developers, and they don't see that 1 tester would not be able to test all 10 user stories at once, because while they'll be implementing maybe 1 week or so, you'll be just doing some analysis and doing the test design and so on, and then you'll have a huge bunch of user stories to be tested. This is a very risky thing too, and you need to understand it beforehand. I know it's evident, but when you see this risk beforehand, you can just go to your team on the planning or on the refinement session or whatever session you need, or retrospective, and talk to them about these cases too, because everyone is quite understanding when you talk to them. Hope you answer your question.
Yeah, I'm here. I can unmute myself. Yes, thank you. And we have a lot of other questions. I will try to read all. Next question. How to add more quality gates when you are single?
More quality gates when you're single.
Yes.
Well, it really depends on yourself, because if you, for example, are good with automation, you can implement some CI/CD processes, so you can automate some checkups and include some scanners into your processes. You can ask some developers to do unit tests for everything they do. It's a really good practice, actually. It would be your first maybe quality gates after implementation. Then you're giving the quality gates the step of your requirement analysis, because on this very step, it's really crucial to have a quality gate here and not letting your not compliant tasks to be taken into sprint. Because when you take this your, and everybody knows what is Dior, yes, is definitions of ready. It means that if you just communicate to your team about when you suggest this task is ready for development, only this kind of task you need to take into sprint. And if you take a task which is not ready for development, it will cause you a lot of troubles in the future. That's why you'll need to put the quality gate on the requirement phase, on the planning phase when you put the monitoring and control points. Then the unit test is your first quality gates after implementation. The CI/CD maybe, some scanners, automated checkups, and maybe the reviews, because sometimes when you work on the project a long road, for now, you can think that it's quite enough to have maybe 2 test cases for this user story, and everything is clear and you don't need something else. So is really good for somebody else to see, for you to review your test cases or your ideas or your checklist, so they can see, oh yeah, that's enough, that's good. Because even sometimes a developer can see that, oh, I did far more than you are testing, and why don't you check these points too? And this reviewing can be a quality gate for you too. Guess that's it.
Thank you. We have next question. Which training courses would you advise for single QA in a project? Should he or she move in the managing direction or any other?
Courses, I wouldn't call out something special. Actually, I don't think that these courses can teach you a lot, actually. I even think that sometimes it's better for you to practice or to have a mentor or maybe some kind of consulting talks with some more experienced person who you know about these different kind of things. And after discussion and after practicing it or trying something, you'll understand it better instead of doing some courses. But I don't know all about the courses in EPAM. Maybe there are really good courses, so I wouldn't be sure about that.
Okay, thank you. We have another questions. How to define story quality gates?
Story quality gate?
Yes.
Interesting question. I don't think I understand it. What do you mean by story quality gate? You mean the user story or the story points? Or what kind of story quality gate are you talking about?
Okay, while we're waiting for answer, you can write in the chat and it's like when do you say story is good to close? Yes, we have answer.
Oh, the story is good to close. It's called definition of done. So it's criteria that can be checked, and if they are all right, you say that this story is done. It can be like the review is done, testing is done, the documentation is written, every code is implemented on some maybe release candidate build. So usually it's what your team and yourself are discussing and decide on yourself. But most commonly, it's the things I've mentioned now. It's when you have the code implemented on a release candidate, build or version, you have tested it on the pre-production successfully, and you have the documentation or instruction or some notes about this user story being done, so everybody knows about what it was and what was about. And usually it might consist of something else like it was reviewed by your product owner or maybe business analytic or quality architect or whoever else. It depends on the team you're having.
Okay, thank you. Um, okay, I have another question. What is the efficiency of internships for juniors?
Oh, for juniors internship, well, that's really funny. I have never been an intern as a junior, so it's not my experience itself, but I've been a mentor for quite a lot of juniors, and I think the most valuable benefit from the internship is doing something in so-called production, like uh, when you are not facing some perfect situations that you can see on your courses, on when you read your books, or just and you can face a lot of discrepancies, impediments, and blockers, and some conflicts with your colleagues and so on and so forth. And this is maybe the most valuable experience that intern can take. But I don't think that it's specifically for interns. It can be for any junior or specialist. It can be for anyone who is new for the team, even if he or she is a team lead or a senior. That's not specifically for internship. Internship is mostly useful for the ones who are not confident in their skills and they just want to train themselves and to feel more confident and to understand how the thing works and to feel themselves that they can do it before they go and ask money for it. That's my opinion. No hurt.
Okay, thank you. And next question, based on your experience, which Scrum or Kanban project management methodology is more optimal for teams where the work of the QA team is performed by one person?
In my opinion, it's Scrum because Agile mindset provides you the really good conditional field. I mean, when you talk about Scrum or you talk about the Agile mindset, you're talking that you have a delivery team. You don't have a developers team and testers team or analytics teams. You have a Scrum Master, a product owner, and the delivery team, development team or delivery team, so-called. It's all the specialists are doing a lot of things to do perfect to reach the goal. I mean, when you face a Scrum in its perfect representation, you'll have the developers who are really aware of how to test something and the analytics who can write a checklist and some testers who can do the release management or make some unit test or maybe provide some system analysis for the architecture they're having, because Scrum is about doing whatever it needs for the team to reach the goal. That's why I think that Scrum is the best for the teams when we have only one tester, because you can divide all the responsibilities between your team and it would be okay for them because their mindset is built the way better for this situation.
Okay, and next question in the chat. Okay, let me start to read it. It's a bit long. Who defines DoD? Is this aim of acceptance criteria of story? Is defined a story level? How to maintain test coverage in manual functional testing? Okay, let's do like one by one. First, who defines?
Okay, the definition of done is defined by the team itself. It's usually sometimes, yeah, I've been through the projects when it was like definition of done and definition of ready was confirmed by the higher management, and it was all the same for all the delivery teams. But usually, and perfectly for Scrum teams, it's the Scrum team itself who gather and decide what kind of criteria they need to comply with, so they can call the user story is done or the user story is ready for development. So it depends on the project and your managers mostly, but ideally it should be the team. What was the next? Was about the story level.
Yeah, but we have only 10 minutes left at the end of our tech talk. I think we can answer for this question in the chat. If you don't mind, Tatiana,
Okay.
will save
Okay, sure.
and answer. Okay, please don't hesitate to send badges to Tatiana. Again, thank you very much for great tech talk. again for you, TikTok, a lot of questions. It's the second time you are our speaker, and the second time we have not enough time to answer for them all. Thank you, and we're waiting you for one more time, be our speaker. And
Thank you.
we have a lot of thank you words in the chat. And see
Thank
you
you. Thank
all
you.
in the next our event.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much. I'll answer all the questions you are asking in the chat, of course. And if you have even more questions, don't hesitate reaching me privately in Teams. Thank you for having me today. Have a nice week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.